and under pressure converted it to a barrel of oil, crude oil, in 20 minutes. I've got documentation on that in my suitcase, wherever it is, in the car right now, but that has been done. I don't know where Noah got the pitch. He certainly could have made it himself out of either vegetable or animal derivative, either one. Okay?
All right. Thank you. This next question is directed to Dr. Hovind. Someone has asked, the amount of heat released by 40 days and 40 nights of vapor condensing to rain is enough to have raised the Earth's temperature to 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientifically, why did this not occur?
Well, that's based on, of course, a couple of assumptions. I'd like to know where they got that number. It's going to raise the Earth's temperature to 6,000 degrees. The theory that I presented in my opening remarks was the idea of an ice meteor causing this phenomenon to happen, which many features of the universe would indicate that there have been giant meteors, even some here on the Earth. I've been to Barringer Crater, big enough to have 20 football games simultaneously at the same time in the bottom. Some big rocks have hit this Earth in the past. There's a 47-mile crater in Canada, 47-mile in diameter. So read the question one more time. I'm going to get off track here.
Yes. The amount of heat released by 40 days and 40 nights of vapor condensing to rain.
The scenario that I presented of an ice meteor triggering the collapse of the canopy would counteract that with no problem. I couldn't prove it happened that way, and you couldn't prove it didn't happen that way. It's outside. It's untouchable as far as science goes. Many things are. It's just a faith, just like evolution is untouchable. They, make life in the laboratory. Make some today. If it happened in the past, do it today. That's not observable. That's not science. And yet we're all paying for that to be taught to the kids in the public school. That's not right either. Okay.
I have to make a quick comment on the pitch. Strong and various Hebrew scholars say that word in Hebrew translated pitch meant bitumen. And bitumen is a petroleum product. I have no idea who wrote this question, but I'm delighted to know that there's someone in the audience who has been thinking about this. Where did that person get the figure? Well, I don't know where the person got the figure, but I have an article with me, Physical Constraints on the Noachian Deluge. It was published in the Journal of Geological Education in 1983. I have it with me, and you can look at it, and it discusses in detail how that when water vapor condenses into rain, it releases energy. It tells you how much energy would have been released by the condensation of 1 kilogram of water. And it proceeds from there to show how that the temperature of the earth during a rain like that, which is described in the Bible, would have reached 3,500 degrees centigrade, 6,400 degrees Fahrenheit. At that time, the Earth would have been the second hottest object in our solar system. Now, that's scientific.
All right. The next question is directed to Mr. Till. Scientists have now found plant life growing at the Mount St. Helens site where volcanic ash sits since 10 years ago. Have you a comment on this, since you alluded to the great extent of time required for plant life to develop on volcanic ash?
Now, I believe if whoever said that will check the facts, they'll see that plant life is growing where there was the mudslide, but where there is a strict bed of lava, that it takes about 200 years for it to decay into a soil that plants can grow in. And you might find a plant growing here and there where maybe wind erosion has carried soil. But check that out, and I think you'll see that that is the standard finding in that matter.
Well, that's an interesting one. Surtsey erupted in Iceland, off the coast of Iceland in 1963. Today it is an island covered with vegetation and hundreds of species of birds and animals, and it erupted out of the sea, pure lava, just 1963. So this business of it taking 200 years for lava to produce plant life, is very inaccurate. And then, maybe this is a previous question, I've written it down here, I don't know if it is, but his figures of 6,000 degree Fahrenheit and all that kind of stuff is based on the assumption that it had to rain enough to go from today's sea level to cover Mount Everest. Well, if that much rain was released, then that's probably correct. But we have an awful lot less rain required for the flood if the mountains are lower and the oceans aren't as deep, plus the oceans or the water coming out of the earth producing some of the water, which would not have the evaporation, latent heat of condensation problem. So I don't buy that. I don't think there's a problem at all, and it's certainly not science, as he said. They can prove it got up to 6,000 degrees for Noah's flood. I would disagree. So plants and things like that growing on lava. The carrots they grow in Alaska that are bigger than baseball bats grow in pure lava and volcanic soil. They do great. And it can happen very rapidly. Xerxes is a classic example to discredit what he just said.
All right, thank you. This will be the last question directed to Dr. Hovind, and then it'll be followed up by a question directed to Mr. Till. This question is directed to Dr. Hovind. This person has put answer either or both, since it is the last question here, and they're both good. If the cubit used at the time of the ark's building cannot be accurately determined now, why does the Genesis author avoid clearly establishing the unit of measurement?
Why does the Genesis author avoid establishing? Well, a cubit is the distance from your elbow to your fingertip. Noah had it with him. 2 of them. Why did God need to establish it? God said, Noah, build it 600 or 300 cubits. Well, it's obvious what the cubit was to Noah. There's no need to tell us. What else could you compare it with? We today use the foot or the yard, which originally were measurements from the fingertip to the nose or the length of a person's foot. Most of our English measurements come from body measurements initially, the inch, the width of the thumb, I believe it was, or the span. So I see no problem at all with the cubit being. Noah knew what it was. He was carrying it around. Okay?
I'm going to surprise you, Dr. Hovind, and say I basically agree with what you say. I believe it was originally decided that a foot was the length of a certain king's foot.
Right.
And I don't remember exactly who that was, but of course his foot would have been longer than someone else's, or shorter than someone else's, and so from here to here would vary from person to person. But scholars agree that it was about 18 inches. And about the lava bed, I don't believe there is a forest growing on that volcanic island now, is there, Dr. Hovind? And we're talking about the volcanic soil decaying to the extent that a forest could take root and grow above the one that was below that layer of volcanic overflow.
And then the last question to Mr. Till. Can you prove scientifically that there was enough variation in the barometric pressure in the flood days to produce strong winds in order to damage the ark?
No, I can't prove that, but I'm simply taking their scenario. When I say their scenario, I mean the scenario of the creation scientist. And I just wish some of you people who are amening practically everything that Dr. Hovind is saying would take the time to study some of that literature. They describe volcanic eruptions everywhere, winds and hurricanes of violent force. That is their scenario. And I'm simply suggesting to you that if they're going to use this to explain how perhaps a layer of rock could be folded like he showed to us, instead of accepting the fact that maybe this was caused by the pressure of continental drift, if he's going to accept that as an explanation for geological phenomena that we see today, then he's going to have to explain to us how the ark could have withstood forces unlike anything that any ship ever experienced before. And if he's going to be scientific about it, he's going to have to do more than say, well, they were smarter back then than we are now.
Read the question one more time, if you would, please.
Yes, sir. question was, can you prove scientifically that there was enough variation in the barometric pressure in the flood days to produce strong winds to damage the ark?
Right. Here you are with a case of proving a negative. Cannot be done. Can you prove it didn't happen that way? Mr. Till has not proven that the scriptural account is impossible scientifically, I don't believe. I think I gave a scenario that it could have happened. I think with as far as the size of the ark, that seems to be his primary objection, that you cannot build a boat. We have boats an awful lot bigger than 400 feet today made out of steel. If Noah had the technology and the wisdom that we would attribute to a person 600 years old with the ability to talk to his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather and everybody in between, I think they probably had unbelievable technology that we're not aware of. Some unusual features are found. And so a hammer was found with dinosaur bones and footprints in Glen Rose, Texas, a stainless steel type hammer that can only be built under double atmospheric pressure. So I think they had a lot of technology, and we tend to get in the evolutionary mindset of we're advanced, they're dumb. The atheists have the very same mindset. Atheism is good, we are smart, fundamental Bible believers are dumb. That is really what they believe, and it's been portrayed numerous times here tonight. That's the attitude, and I think that needs to be rethought, Mr. Till. Everybody may not be quite as dumb as you give us credit for. Thank you.
Gentlemen, we didn't discuss this. Would you like 2 minutes to have closing remarks? It's up to you, gentlemen. You have some closing remarks? Like 2 minutes?
Sure, we left a lot of things hanging. That'd be good.
Left a lot of things hanging? Okay. We don't want to hang anyone tonight. So we're going to begin with Dr. Hovind, because the last question was directed here to Mr. Till. So Dr. Hovind, if you'd like to take, let's go 2 minutes, if we could. 2 minutes.
Okay, great. I've got several pages of things we really left hanging. He mentioned that water weighs 8 pounds per gallon. What held it up there? I'd like to inform him that clouds are pure water. And they obviously are up there. I don't know. I know that real cold ice at 300 or 400 below zero, ice becomes magnetic. You can pick it up with a magnet. And the Earth's magnetic field is declining rapidly. NASA says the half-life of our magnetic field is now about 830 years. We're losing our magnetic strength pretty rapidly. So in Noah's day, the magnetic field may have been 20 to 30 times stronger than it is today. One plausible scenario is that it was an ice barrier, which would be water, like it mentions, only in the frozen form, suspended by the magnetic field. It certainly could have been a canopy, a vapor barrier. Venus and Jupiter are covered with vapor barriers, canopies, and it's extremely hot on the surface of Venus for that reason. Many of the planets have these layers to the atmosphere. The Earth certainly could have had a canopy of water. The Bible says it did. He mentioned the rotten luck syndrome. Why not go dig up the ark and show it to us? Talk about the rotten luck syndrome. Let's find some missing links. Show me how life evolved. Make some in the laboratory for me today. They can't seem to do it today. They say, well, it had a pre-flood environment, different. The early environment was methane gas, they refer to, and high CO2 levels and no oxygen and all that. Well, that was Miller's experiments, and all he did was produce a few amino acids, and then he had to trap them carefully so they didn't get destroyed going back to you again. Miller did not create life in the laboratory. Made a few amino acids is all. But they have the same rotten luck syndrome. They can't prove evolution at any turn. They can't find any of the missing links between any of the major kinds of animals. What they do is point to little variations or extinct lines, and as if extinction somehow proves the theory. Well, to me, that would be more evidence for creation. They'll say man lost his tail because we didn't need it. Didn't need it. Have you ever thought how handy it would be to have a tail? Come to the door with 2 sacks of groceries and try to open the door with your tail to get in it. All the examples they give are examples of losses, not gains. This missing link, rotten luck syndrome is on their back, not mine.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hovind. Mr. Till.
Well, I'm not going to speak about the missing links in the 2 minutes that I have, because except that I'm going to say it's a funny thing to me that a paleontologist like Stephen Jay Gould will spend his lifetime studying fossils. A microbiologist like Richard Dawkins will spend his lifetime studying biology. and by the thousands and thousands they say evolution is the explanation for the diversity on Earth, a man like Dr. Hovind will spend his life reading the Bible